Ayin Hay, 75. 75A on the top. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's supposed to be learning the basic English immediately. Okay. We're going to start from the third line. We're talking about the Tvul Yaim. Someone that went to the mikveh because he was Tameh, but he's not perfectly pure until nightfall. So he's called Tvul Yaim. He went to the mikveh, he was Taival. And during that day, he's called the Tvul Yaim. And in the evening, he can eat truma. So we say, we have actually three sources for this. And the question is, why do we need three sources? So one of the sources was actually by truma. Well, it says in the laws of the Kayanim, it says, he can't eat kudshim until he becomes pure. I'm reading from a Rashi. I'm not reading from the text. Now, it's unclear what the word kudshim means. Does it mean truma or does it mean kudshim? And it's unclear what yitar means, if it means the sun setting or it means bringing a sacrifice. Whatever the case is, we said so far that it means truma and the sun setting. Okay, that's source number one. You have another source that says the sun sets and he'll be pure. And we have another source that says ad malaisi meitara, until the woman, that after she gives birth, until the days of her purity are over. So the days of purity are over at nightfall on the 80th day or on the 60th day. So that nightfall is a third verse that says that a Tvul Yaim, she's considered a Tvul Yaim, Teveles Yaim. Usually it's just one day because a person goes to the mikveh, then that night he's pure. But by her, she goes to the mikveh and then she waits 66 days. So it's considered Yaim Aruch, a long day. Okay, why do we need these three verses to tell me the same point, that you can eat truma after the sun sets? So tzrichi, it's necessary. If we would just use that pasuk, the first one that we mentioned, it doesn't tell me over there how the person becomes pure. I wouldn't know with what. With what does it become pure? So I have another pasuk that tells me when the sun sets, he's pure. Okay, so it teaches me then. Because Rahman of Hashemesh, if it would have only said that when the sun sets, Hani Mili, the Lav Bar Kapara, I would have thought that's only someone that doesn't need to bring their sacrifice on the following day. However, Aval de Bar Kapara, but someone that has to bring a sacrifice on the following day, Imad the Maisa Kapara would say that when's he going to be pure? Only after he brings the sacrifice, and the sun setting is not sufficient. So Rahman ad Malais, so the pasuk tells me by the woman that gave birth, that who does have to bring a sacrifice on the following day, that nevertheless she's pure already at sunset of the 80th day. And she does not have to wait for the sacrifice to eat truma. She has to wait for the sacrifice to bring other sacrifices, to eat a sacrifice, or to bring other sacrifice. Because Rahman ad Malais, if it would only say until her days are filled, which is the 80th day after a woman gives birth to a girl, I would have thought of B'lei Tvila. Maybe she doesn't need to use the mikveh. Maybe it's just the time itself. Because Rahman ad Shayitar, so the pasuk says until he purifies himself, that means that he has to go to the mikveh as well. So the three verses complement each other, and each one tells me, Yitar wouldn't have told me with what. The sun setting tells me with what, but it doesn't tell me that someone that needs a sacrifice, it's sufficient. So the filling of the days tells me that even someone that needs a sacrifice, it's sufficient just to fill the days. Okay. And the Yitar would tell me that they need the mikveh. What about, there was an opinion over there we had yesterday. The Tana de Beir Rabbi Shmuel taught that no, that wasn't it. That pasuk that says that you can't eat from holies until he purifies himself. What does holies meant? We said that it meant truma. And what type of purification does he need? The mikveh. Why? Because we're dealing with the type of zav that did not need to bring a sacrifice. We're dealing with the type of mitzayra that was not that was only quarantined, that he wasn't mukhlat. Mukhlat is defined. It wasn't.
They call it confirmed.
Confirmed. He wasn't confirmed. He was only in quarantine. So that person only needs to use the mikveh. He doesn't need to bring the sacrifices. So then what would it mean, Adashi Yitar, until he uses the mikveh? So what was he not allowed to eat? Where was he not allowed to eat truma? So, but according to the one that argues on the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel Damar Bezav Bal Gimel Riyas Mitzar Machlar Kas Medaber, that we're not talking about a zav that saw twice. We're talking about a zav that saw 3 times. That means they need to bring a sacrifice. We're talking about a mitzayra that was confirmed, that needs a sacrifice. So therefore, if that's the case, then I have to retranslate the whole pasuk. But kadashim layoichal adashi yitar is now referring to he can't eat from sacrifices adashi yitar until he brings his own sacrifice. Hi adashi yitar adamaisi kapara until he brings a sacrifice. Trei kroi bekadashim lamali. Why do I need another pasuk to tell me that someone that needs to bring the sacrifice before they eat from sacrifices need to bring their personal sacrifice to be fully atoned, be fully purified before they can eat from sacrifices? How do I know? I mean, not how do I know? Why do I need 2 verses that tell me the same thing? The Gemara says, tzricha, it's necessary. Because Rachmana b'yeledes, if it would only say about the woman that gave birth, mishum demruba tamasa. What was the pasuk by the woman that gave birth? It says, it says that she has to bring the sacrifice. I would have thought that this woman was tummy for so long, that's why she needs to bring a sacrifice. How long was she tummy? 80 days or 60 days? Aval zav, but by a zav. He's tummy for 7 days. Emalai? I could have thought that maybe not. Because of Rahman, in other words, that you don't have to wait for the sacrifice to eat truma. Not to eat truma. You don't have to wait for the sacrifice to eat kudshim. You could start eating kudshim already from nightfall. That's what I could have thought. And because of Rahman bezav we throw in a very interesting comment over here. We could have thought that maybe a yeledes, a woman that gave birth, is more lenient than a zav. Now, why is that? She was tummy already for 60 or 80 days. Well, the interesting thing is that although she was tummy in reference to money, in reference to sacrifices, but she's not tummy to her husband. During those 66 days, she can be together with her husband. So that's called huta mechlala. Although she's bleeding, she's seeing blood, which officially she should be separated from her husband. But here there's a special exemption that it's called Yimei Tayar, the blood of purity, that she's allowed to be with her husband. Well, if that's the case, that this woman is allowed to be with her husband, then maybe she's also allowed to eat from sacrifices before she brings the sacrifice. You see, there's a lenient scenario here.
Just after childbirth?
After childbirth. So it tells me that that's not the case. She can be with her husband, but that doesn't mean that she can eat from sacrifices. Commentaries discuss if the blood, the menstrual blood, which makes her tamei, and the blood from childbirth, the yemei tayar, is really the same blood. That was a machlekes we had in Masechta Nida, machlekes Rav and Levi. Is it mayan echad or shtei mayanas? Is it one source of blood or is it 2 sources of blood? If it's one source of blood, then this Gemara fits perfectly, because we're saying that this is a special exemption. There's 2 sources of blood, then it's hard to explain why this is a special exemption. It's not the same blood anyway. Okay. B'mayim yuva v'tamei ad erev lamali. It's v'tamei ad erev. Okay, here we're introducing a new pasuk. We're talking about a keli, a vessel that touched a sheretz, which is a tamei creature, dead creature that's tamei. So you have to put the keli in the mikveh, and then it's impure until evening. So it's similar to a person going to the mikveh; it has to wait till evening. This also has to wait till evening. The tamei adara. Why do I need this pasuk? We know already that a person that goes to the mikveh is tummy until evening. So this person also is tummy until evening. This keli is tummy. Rab Zera l'negia. Coming to tell me a very interesting halacha. I know that a person that went to the mikveh during the day has to wait until evening until he's allowed to eat the truma. What about touching the truma? Does he have to wait until evening before he touches truma? He went to the mikveh already. He's starved. It says yes, he has to wait until evening. Where do we learn that from? From this pasuk, that just like a vessel doesn't eat, a vessel just touches. And you have to wait till evening. So to the person, has to wait until evening before he can touch it, even though he went to the mikveh already. The Tanya was started in a brisa. V'tamei says that he's tamei. It says v'tamei adarev, right? It's tamei until evening. Yachal akal, maybe it's entirely tamei. Tamalei mevitar. It says no. Then it says that he's pure. Now, it doesn't say that he's pure then. It says that afterwards, it says that he is pure, not that he will be pure. So that means that he was already pure the whole time. B'taher is a description, not saying v'yitar, and he will become. B'taher. It's what do they call that? Attributive, as opposed to right. Predicative. It's not the word. No, it's describing the person. It's not saying what will happen to him. V'taher, and he is pure, and he will become pure. Right. So ivitar. That's saying what he should do, right? That's not describing. That's not describing. That's a verb.
It's the same word.
Yeah. V'taher. This is v'taher.
Wow.
I didn't see the Makutas.
Ivitar yachalakal. Maybe he's entirely pure. Talmud Leimer v'tami. It says he's not pure. It says he's still tummy. Okay, so how does that work? It says kan lamaisa kan l'truma. He's tummy. It's during the day, right? He went to the mikveh already. He's allowed to eat maisa because he went to the mikveh. But for truma, he has to wait until evening. So he's tahar and he's tamei at the same time. Depends for what.
Whoa.
It's relative, right? Okay. Yeah. Someone said, your hands clean. You say my hands are clean. So, but it depends for what. For if I'm gonna go eat, now I'll wash my hands again. And then even then, if I'm gonna do a surgery, I'm gonna wash my hands another time. Put on gloves or something. So it doesn't mean it's clean. It's clean. Okay. How do you know that for Meiser it's acceptable just to go to the mikveh, and for Truma you have to wait until evening? So it says Mistabra. Well, I know already when it comes to eating truma, that eating truma you have to wait till evening. So to touching truma, you see that's what we're dealing with over here, because we're quoting a pasuk about a keli. So to touching truma, touching truma, you have to wait until evening.
Does that include also like a secondary source of truma also? Because then that's
I don't think so.
thrice removed. So
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's only if he became tamei.
Thrice.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Huge.
I think it's only the tumah that can come on a man, not tumah like the food type tumah. For those tumahs, I think it just goes to the mikveh would satisfy it. This is tumah of a sheretz, and this is tumah of a person that has a mission. Those tumahs he has to wait till evening. Iba Yasema, another something that comes from an Abba tumah, from a father of tumah. Iba Yasema, another approach is Negia de Truma Mehacha Nafka. We have another source that you're not allowed to touch Truma during the day. It says B'chal Kodesh Leisiga. We were talking about the Yoledes, the woman that gave birth. She's not allowed to touch Kodesh. Azhara La'eichel. Very interesting Gemara. It says she's not allowed to touch it, and it says this is telling us that she's not allowed to eat it. How did it get that? Well, why don't you just say what it says? It says you're not allowed to touch, so maybe it means she's not allowed to touch. Well, it says she can't touch anything that's holy. But it also says that she can't come into the temple. Now we do a comparison. Can't touch anything that's holy, can't come into the mikdash. Yeah, I haven't seen the Gemara use this term, but apparently it does. Just like when entering into the temple, there's a very severe punishment, which the life is taken. Over here, that means that karis gets the punishment of excision. If someone enters into the temple when they're impure, so too, not touching truma, also the life is taken, which means the punishment of excision. The problem is that that's not true. That touching truma does not incur karis. So therefore, we have to say ubenegia netilas neshamaleka, and it's not true. So therefore, what do we have to say now? We have to say that it's talking about eating, because eating kodesh or truma does incur a type of death, not the same. It's not karis. It's misa b'dei shamayim.
If you're tummy and you eat truma,
it's misa b'dei shamayim.
Mhm.
Not in court, but it's stuff from heaven. Okay.
But karis is also a sort of spiritual. It's not court related.
Right. And that's why we're connecting the two. Entering into the temple and eating truma when a person's tummy, both of them have netilas neshama, the taking of a life. Then why doesn't it say so? Why does it say that it's talking about touching? It says hachi kamar. This is what it means. Negia kachila. It's coming to tell us that touching is like eating, which means that anyone that's not allowed to eat is not allowed to touch.
Is there like masechta tshuva or something for people who are trying to do tshuva or something? Because like all this is pretty harsh.
Right.
I guess that's what time.
Probably Yuma.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the last chapter of Yuma. But okay, were you here for Yuma? No, you came in Rosh Hashanah.
I came.
Yeah. Okay, now we enter into a quite a sugya, which I think is unique to this Masechta. I think this is where it is, and that's where it is. Yeah, either you learn it here or you don't learn it. And even if you learn it here, not necessarily do you follow. Okay, you ready? It goes like this. Psua daka.
Oh, yeah.
Crushed testicles. Well, actually, we'll see. There's a discussion if the word daka has a hey or an aleph. That is a big machlaikas.
Yeah, it says an aleph.
The Sefer Torah and Prague and all of that. But the way our Gemara is going to view it is pitsua means wounded, and daka is going to mean crushed, which means daka has a hey. Over here it's written with an aleph,
yes.
But the word daka with an aleph means low. Daka ushval ruach, low and low. Daka with the hay means crushed. Dachi b'meducha. Now, what's the difference? What's going on over here? The question is if the word daka is referring to the testicles, which means something low, or it's referring to what happened to them, that they were crushed, right?
No,
Is
so
it a
that's
noun
like,
or a verb? That's the question.
the difference between,
The aleph and the hey.
yeah,
That's the discussion. Anyway, whatever the case is here, we said that if a man is married to a woman and she's actually a kohen is married to a woman and he becomes a Petzuadaka, but he doesn't live with her afterwards. So she's still allowed to eat truma because she's married to him and he's a kohen. And she never became invalidated because they never had relations afterwards. Mantana, the Gemara says, Mishtameres labia psula dairaisa achla. Who's the one that says that a woman in weight of having relations to someone that's disqualified from having relations with her is still allowed to eat truma, even though she's in weight for that? Amar Rabbi Lazar, so Rabbi Lazar says, now you have to follow this carefully. Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, he's an Amira. He says, the machlekes shnuya, it's actually a machlekes between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. This is the opinion of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar says it's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar, I think Rabbi Shimon's son, I think that's what we had before. Or maybe it's Rabbi Lazar ben Shimon. I don't remember who we quoted before. Anyway, whatever the case is, over there, we had a Gemara that said that an almana that's married to a kohen gadol, that's betrothed to a kohen gadol, that's a problem. Is she allowed to eat truma? Well, she never had relations with him yet, but she's betrothed to him. So she's in weight of disqualifying relations. So is she allowed to? Is she allowed to eat truma already now because she's owned already by the kohen gadol? So we said that she's not disqualified yet according to Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. So that would fit over here as well. It would be Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yechanan Amar Fil Tamer Rabbi Meir. You can even say it's the other view over there. But Shani Hachi Shikvar Achla. Over there, it was only betrothed. Over here, the woman was married. When she was married, she already started eating. Now you're trying to tell us that she's disqualified and say to take away her truma card. If that you can't take away until you have clear that she's disqualified and she wasn't disqualified. Rabbi Lazar, what does Rabbi Lazar say about that? Isn't there a difference between starting to eat and not? Why did Rabbi Lazar say it's only the opinions of those two, of Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Shimon? He could have said it's Rabbi Meir, and the difference is because over here she started eating. Over there, Rabbi Meir said no because she never ate. Rabbi Lazar says, we don't say that once you get the truma card that you can still continue eating even though there's a problem. We don't say that. Because if you would say that once you get the card, once you can eat, you hold on to it. A Bas Yisrael, woman that's not a kohen from her house, but she marries a kohen, and then her husband passes away and there's no children. She goes back to her father's house. She's not allowed to eat truma. But if she ate already, according to Rabbi Lazar would say, according to the way you're putting this, once she ate, she got the card, she can continue eating. They don't take it away. Why doesn't she continue eating?
but obviously, if she's a Bas Kohen and she marries a Yisrael, she can no longer.
Well, if she marries a Yisrael, if she had a child, then she doesn't eat truma. But if she doesn't, then she goes back to her father's house. He was saying the other way. He was saying her father's house doesn't eat truma. Her husband does. Her husband passed away. She was going to go back to her father's house and not eat truma. But we're saying that according to this, well, she started already. She should continue. You don't take away that privilege. So that's what would come out. So therefore, we say that that's not how it works. And Rabbi Yechanan, what does Rabbi Yechanan say? He says that is how it works. He says Hasam paka kinyani achali paka kinyani. You see, why does a woman eat truma if her husband's a kohen? The answer is because kinyan kaspai. He acquired her, and anything that's under his possessions is allowed to eat truma. If he dies, then we don't say that she's under his possessions anymore. She's under his acquisition. She's not an acquisition of his anymore. So therefore, over there you don't need truma. But in other cases where the kayan was betrothed to the woman, or she already started and he becomes a psuadaka, they just haven't lived together, then she would still be eligible.
So she's still his acquisition.
She's still acquisition. Now, once she started, Rabbi Yechanan says that's where it makes a difference. So if she's betrothed, that means she never started to eat truma. That would be she won't continue. But if she started because she was married and then her husband becomes p'tua daka, so she continues. Ezo p'tua. What is considered a p'tua?
Now,
Yeah, this is complicated because the terms are not clear and there's no diagrams. So, Taner Rabbanan. Started in a brayse is a p'tua daka. Who's a p'tua daka? Kol sheniftu beitim shalei. Anyone that's testicles were wounded. Afilu achas me'am, even if it's only one of them. Afilu nikfu, even if it's punctured. Afilu nimukai, even if it was, even if it decayed, probably. Afilu chasrei, and even if it's deficient, something's missing.
Why should just one
Make a difference,
disqualify the woman? She could still get pregnant.
right? We're going to see it. It's not so clear. There's going to be a machlekes. Am Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishar Rabbi Yechon ben Breka, Shemati mepi chacham bekerem beyavne. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yechon ben Breka, says, I've heard from the sages in Kerem beyavne. Kerem beyavne was where the Sanhedrin went after the temple. Call the vineyard of Yavne. It was wise. Either they had to hide out in a vineyard, or it was they sat in rows like a vineyard. Kol she'ein lai ela beitza achas ein al srischama. He says, oh no, if there's one testicle there, then that would just be like srischama means that the person was sterile, but not because of an accident, because that's the way he was naturally. Bekasha, and then there would be no problem. So one testicle wounded is not a problem. The Gemara says, this was naturally, this was a wound. You can't say that. But it means he's like someone that was naturally sterile, which such a person is allowed to get married. Bekasha and his kashas. The Gemara says, why did you say that if it's punctured, then he can't have children? But who governed the salak ledikla? There was a person that climbed up a palm tree. However, v'charze silva bebeitzim, but he got poked with a thorn in the testicles. V'nafik mini kechut demugla, and came out a string of pus. Probably semen came out. Va'ilad, and he still gave birth after that. So you see, so it doesn't mean a woman can't get pregnant. Why are you saying that he's already sterile? Gemara says, "Hashalach Shmuel lekamei Rav Amarlei." Shmuel sent this question to Rav, and Rav said, "Say v'chazer al banav me'anhim. Go check out the wife and see if she had relations with someone else. Maybe there's a different father here." Okay, so we thought we had a real question. Turns out that we didn't have all the details of this story.
I mean, why would they assume such a thing that she had a child with someone else? If clearly, he had an omission, I don't see why
they were saying that he had his testicles were punctured in an accident. The Gemara is assuming that means that from then on he won't be able to have a child, and nevertheless his wife then has a child. So that was a question. How does that work? The answer was there was another man.
Relations with her.
No. It was an accident. An accident means he got hurt. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. P'tzua daka b'dei shemayim kasher.
Wait, we saying she can't continue living with him?
Yeah. Because of the accident.
What if she was pregnant from before the accident?
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with how many children they had or anything.
So the moment he changes status, he has to give a divorce. So the only person he can marry is a woman in a similar situation.
No, a convert or someone that's not considered part of the kahal.
contract.
Now, the solution for that today, and even in the Gemara, was that there were remedies. Today, there's clearly remedies, the surgeries that they can do. They have these microsurgeries, right? And even in the Gemara's time, they had the remedies. You put this on it and that on it and whatever, and things could heal and whatever.
It's funny you say that. The other day when I was walking the shore, I see this lady, a local lady from the neighborhood, not Israel kind of, and she's picking all these leaves off a tree. I go, that was like side trees from cherry too. I said, is there a reason you're picking that? This is like 5:30 in the morning, she says. And she tells me, oh, this is a remedy for this. And she was using like,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
We don't have immaculate conception in our religion.
Nope.
Who got pregnant because of
No, not halachically. We would cannot use that as a all the laws of the whole, all these things would just disappear. The woman's husband goes away for 12 months and she's pregnant. We have laws about that. We can't use that as it's a lame excuse. Okay. If it came from heaven, now what does the heaven mean? So Rashi gives us this interesting example. It says if he got frightened from thunder or hail or something, or the way he was born. That's what I thought it meant. So Amarava, Haina the Karinan Pitsua, Valekarinan Hapitsua. It says Pitsua, someone that was wounded. Doesn't say the one that was wounded. Now, the one that was wounded with the definite article would mean that that's how he was born. But Pitsua meant that that's what happened to him. There's different ways of reading this. Another one is Pitsia. Pitsia would mean, if it would have said Pitsia, that would mean even from heaven. But Pitsua meant that that was something that was done. There's different versions of this. I don't know the grammar. And okay. Masni Satana was taught in a Braisa, Nemali of a Pitsua, Nemali of a Mamzer. It says a Pitsua cannot come into someone that had this injury, who was wounded. And also a mamzer can't come into the congregation. Mala alam b'dei adam, afkan b'dei adam. Just like the mamzer came about through people's action, so too the Pitsua had to come out through people's action, not what was naturally. Amarava Pitsua bekulan, dach bekulan, krus bekulan. It seems that the dach, Pitsua daka, krus shafcha. It seems that daka is with a hay from our Gemara. We don't do that, right? We write it with the aleph. What's the chabad? It's an aleph, I think. Yeah.
It's an aleph. It's an aleph.
An aleph. Yeah, but I can handle the question. Okay. So it's talking about either there's wounded, crushed, and cut. Pitsua, dach, and krus. Now, what was wounded, what was crushed, and what was cut? What was cut? So it's bekulan. Bekulan means whether it's in the testicles or whether it's in the member or whatever it is, any of those, that part of the private area would be a problem. Dach bekulan, krus bekulan, or a cut on any of those. Pitsua bekulan, when it says that it's wounded on all of them, bein sheniftzah gid, whether the male organ was wounded, bein sheniftu beitzim, whether it's the testicles that were wounded, bein sheniftu chute beitzim, whether it's the is there a word for the chutim? The veins that are that hold the testicles in.
Somatic cords.
Spermatic cords. Or whether the spermatic cords were crushed. Dach bekulan is the same thing. Whether any of those were crushed. Krus bekulan, and the same thing as if it's cut. The male organ, the testicles, or the spermatic cords. Amaleu mirabanan l'rava. Sounds like one of the students told to Rava, "Mimaidai pitzua daka b'simakam ema mirayshe." How do you know that it means that it's a wound in that private area, the reproductive area? Maybe it's on its head, on his head. He has a wound on his head. He can't get married.
Right.
Amalei midlei mana beidairas shmamina b'simakam, because it didn't say that the first, second, third generation can't marry in. Why didn't it say that? You know, sometimes by like a convert of a Mitzri, it says for 3 generations he can't marry in. Why didn't it say it over here that it's only for three generations? The reason is because there are no generations. It can only be, it's only one generation, right?
That was that for the nations of like Ramon?
Yeah.
by
Amaini,
Israel.
no, Amain and Moav was different, but Edom and Mitzri, that was 3 generations, right? So because there are no generations, because obviously he's sterile. So it has to be over there in the reproductive area, not in the head. Maybe the answer is different. All of this was an assumption. Maybe the reason why the Torah doesn't say the first 3 generations is because the first 3 generations are kosher. It's just this one fellow that's not valid. And that's, you want to know why it didn't say it? Because it's not true. Not because it's impossible. Because even if there is a second generation, he's allowed to marry.
Okay.
But why do you have to say you can't be in the head? Why can't you have chas v'shalom or pituitary tumor or some tumor that causes hormonal changes?
That's a deeper way of learning this Gemara. I think the Gemara, that could be like on a deeper level, that's what the Gemara means. But on the simple reading of the Gemara, he says, how do you know that Pitzua Daka, it doesn't tell me which part of the body he had the wound? Well, actually, Daka would mean the testicles. But if Daka means crushed, the way our Gemara is learning it, then it doesn't tell me. It's just another verb. Pitzua is wounded, a wound, Daka is crushed, and krus means cut. Well, krushavka would be more obvious, but we'll see that in a minute.
Pituit, is that the word?
That's the pituitary. Okay.
So how did it become so?
And I had a pshat in Beinei Necha, that the tefillin go between the eyes. It doesn't go between the eyes, it goes on the forehead.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe because the occipital cortex is right on the back, that's the place of the knot. So that's the Beinei Necha, it's referring to the... Anyway, it's creative pshat. Okay. So okay, so the Gemara answers this. Maybe okay, we're going to compare it to krus shavcha. Krus shavcha is a cut and it pours. Something was cut and it pours. Just like obviously something that's cut and it pours, it spills out. That must mean ba'isimakam in the reproductive area. So afhainami ba'isimakam, it's in the same verse. So that's also referring to the reproductive area, not to the head. Krushavcha gufei mimayde ba'isimakam. He doesn't let up. He says, how do you know that the krushavcha is in that area? Eima misvase, maybe it's from his lips, his mouth. He gets a cut on his lips, and the saliva drips out. So shavcha ksiv b'makam sheshayfech. No, it's in the area that would pour. That would pour. So the Gemara says, well, one second. Why doesn't the lips? Why can't it be from the lips also? It says the lips don't pour; they spit. All right. Maybe it means the nose, because the nose, it just drips out.
Right.
Miksiv bishvaich, the nose drips out always. Krus shavcha ksiv, misha al yedei krisa shayfech, shlay al yedei krisa ina shayfech el mekaleach, lafuke hai the idividi shayfechu. it's coming to exclude that it's referring to a cut on the nose, because the nose does not drip out mucus because it's cut
When you have a cold.
when you have a cold or whatever. It's not, it has nothing to do with having a cut on it. It always does. Here, it would only drip out because it was cut, and not, and when it's not cut, then it doesn't drip out.
And it says specifically like mucus or some kind, because when I think of a cut, I think of like shedding blood or something.
Right. No. So what it means is that the part of the body would be pouring out. And so we're talking about if a person has this cut that it starts to pour out, so then he can't get married into the congregation. So what are we referring to? So I said it must be on the reproductive area.
right, yeah.
Over there it would pour out. It's probably not. Is it talking about the urine would pour out, or is it talking about the semen would pour out? Rashi says. Right. Now, is that talking about?
By the way, that's the area he's talking about.
Right. Yeah, what's up, Baze? Yeah, that's describing why the mouth would not work. Yeah. Yeah, it probably is talking about that. If a person would have
I don't buy it for the mouth because when it comes to Lashon Hara, stuff comes out of the mouth. It goes a lot further than the other.
right.
Just bringing out.
But that's what it says. El is zayrik. It's not shayfach. It's zayrik. It spits out. That the mouth spits out. Okay.
Is it just sort of unclear about where this, I guess, fluid is coming out of?
It's unclear what the verse is referring to. The verse doesn't describe it. What exactly was cut? It just says a cut and it pours. So this rabbi is asking Rava, how do you know it means in the reproductive area? Maybe it means on the nose or in the mouth or something. Okay. The Masnisa Tana, you have a brisa that said, Nemra le'yavei p'tzuadak v'nemra le'yavei mamzer. It says a p'tzuadaka can't come into the congregation, and mamzer can't come into the congregation. Ma'alalan beisimakim, afkan beisimakim. Just like, how did the mamzer come about? Well, it was from a misconduct in the reproductive area. So too, the krushavcha is also in the p'tzuadaka is also in the reproductive area. Nikev lamata me'atara. Yeah, this is a little confusing to me because now we're saying that if there's a puncture that goes through the organ and it goes through lamata me'atara means that it's on the corona itself.
Distal.
What does that mean? Distal?
Distal.
Distance.
The further you go,
further away from the body.
proximal is closer to it.
So distal. But the other end of this puncture is coming out from what was it? Proximal. Closer to the body. So Savar Rab Chia bar Abba Lachshuri. Rab Chia bar Abba thought that it should be kosher. Rab Chia bar Abba, student of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Rav Asi, Hachi Amar Bishua ben Levi, Atara Kolshu Ma'akeves. The corona, even one drop affects his validity to marry in. Now, there's a problem here because the Mishnah said that if there's a drop of the Torah left, then it's already kosher. Then he is accepted. Now we're saying a puncture, it must mean atara, the entire atara, anything, it must mean that above the atara is a problem. That must be what he meant. Should go a little further.
I have your side, so we have to do that.
Okay. Let me take it a little further. I don't understand the Gemara either way, so I'll just we'll translate it and we'll see. Yosef Ravina Kambin Baile. Ravina was sitting and he had a question. Malaya Chut Shamru Alpane Kule Alpane Rubai. I'm sorry, I skipped the heading. If there's remaining from the corona a little bit, then it's kosher. He says, how much is this little bit? Even if like the a string's breadth,
Yeah.
a hair's breadth. He says, does that mean all the way around in the entire circumference, or al pnei ruba, or is that enough? Amalei rava teisva, rabba teisva ravina, malayachut al pnei ruba uklapi resha. It's a hair's breadth on the majority of the circumference, but it needs to be a hair's breadth towards the proximal as opposed to distal. It has to be towards the top, because the corona is wider, is closer to the body on the upper part than it is on the bottom part. So it means that you need the organ needs to be more complete. So therefore, it needs the top of the corona needs to be there. That's what it's saying. Not sure how this is going to work, because how does the bottom of it still there if the top is missing? On the lower end, it's saying, well, that wasn't as significant. Amar Rav Huna kolmas ksheira. Rav Huna says, if the cut on his organ was cut like the way a quill would be cut, it's ksheira. It's kosher. Kimarzev, but if it's cut straight, like a marzev is like a pipe. A pipe, that means that there's an indent in the inside. Then it's psula. And the reason is high shalt be'avira, high low shalt be'avira. The ear is getting in and it's ruining the way for him to procreate. So that affects his kosherness. Rav Chizdamar kamarziv ksher kakomas psula. It's exactly the opposite, because high garid v'high garid. The question is how it's going to rub against his wife when he's having relations. If it's cut like a quill, then it's going to affect the way he's going to rub against her. Amar Rava Kavaseder Rav Huna mistaber. Rava says that Rav Huna's pshat is probably more logical, because Haile Shalit Be'avira v'Hai Shalit Be'avira. It has to do with the ear getting in. Imishum Gridusa, if you're worried about how it's going to rub against her, Midi Dehavi Abarza de Chavisa. He says, well, this could be similar to a spout that's on a barrel, that the upper part could be wider and the lower part could be more narrow. And so, in other words, even though there's a cut at the end of the organ, but the beginning of the organ is still full. Amali Ravina Mereimar, Hachiam Marzuch made the Rav Papa. Hilchas Benka Komas Benka Marziv Kshera. Miumi Baile Lamatimatara Lamaila. Rav Papa said that whether it's cut like a quill or whether it's cut like a pipe, it's kosher. However, his question was that where is this? Is this below the corona or above it? It says Pshita de Lamaila Matara. Obviously, it's talking about above the corona. It means proximal. Because if it's more distal from the body, even if it was entirely cut, even if it's not just cut on a slant or whatever. Ravina l'shabushe l'mereimar hu debai. When Ravina asked that question, or Ravina says that he's not sure, Ravina is asking, he was just checking to see if Mareimar understood it well. It was actually a story where a person had a cut, and in order to make him more kosher, they had to cut a little more, and then he became more kosher. That istatim gufta de shechvasera va'apik b'makim ketanim. Apparently, there's two veins. One would be for the urine, and one would be for the semen. Savarav bibi barabayalach shure. What happened was the vein where the semen would come from got blocked, and it was coming out through where the urine would come from. So Rav Bibi Barab, I think scientifically, I don't think this is the same. This is accurate, but whatever the case is, we don't understand Chazal always. So Rav Bibi Barabaya lachshure. Rav Bibi Barabaya thought to say that he should be kosher. Rav Papa mishum to asu mimolai amrisa mila malaisa. Rav Bibi Barabaya come from the family of Eli. they died young. So he says that's why you're saying things that don't make sense. It has to develop, and it's not being developed properly if it's coming through the wrong place. So therefore, it's not accepted. I guess let's leave it over here. Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Atzlacha.
This is a-
Thank you.